July 1.
I got it. Yeah.
That was the agreement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to April 14th, Monday, April 14th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Roll call. To my left, we have Mayor Stefan Root, and to my immediate right, we have Councilman Fred Green.
Councilman, the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Neal. Restart.
No, you're all right.
Okay. I may actually get the approval of, excuse me, March 10th, 2025 minutes.
So move. Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. We will now have any public comment. We have no members from the public. All right. We will now have a presentation from our CFO, Mr. Richard Troutman, in regards to our February 2025 year-to-date financial results.
Thank you, Chair and Council. I will speak into the mic more frequently, and feel free to remind me as needed. So as Councilman Davis commented, it's February, so that we are covering, and what the first slide is a repeat of virtually every month, and that's just some reminder, background information. And the budget has no amendments so far this year, and we still have the 40+ million pension liability. As I move to the actual February key points, we have $16.8 million of operating cash and $15.8 million for specialty. As one point, the real estate taxes started 1 month earlier this year, so we're going to see that we're going to have higher balances compared to last year. The staffing, to refresh everybody's memory, last month we talked about January. It was reported that there were 20 vacancies, and there was a discussion that that wasn't really what was vacant at the time. That was for the full year. Well, we now have looked into it, and there were 6 real vacancies. So there's 6 positions that were budgeted to be employed that are being carried as vacant. So that's real time. Revenues, $9.2 million, which is year-to-date, which is $100,000 unfavorable to budget. But if you recall, our conversation in January, for the January month, was that we had a bigger planned deficit, and that was largely because the revenues were not coming in. Now we're starting to see that they are coming in, so the revenues are effectively on budget. The expenses.
Hold on. What was the number for January unfavorable on the revenue side? Do you remember?
Mayor, speaking to the mic.
I don't have it.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me.
But it's a whole lot more than what we're seeing now.
Oh, absolutely.
saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I can look it up, and I'll look it up after the meeting, so you have it real time.
I'll just pull out the old notes from the last
Yes,
meeting.
that would be if they were audible.
No, I mean the presentation
Yes.
itself.
So the and the expenses are $1.2 million favorable to budget. So that's the second month that we were favorable to budget. So that's key, that we're tracking that the budget is favorable. So and then we paid $5.8 million of bills in the month of February. Moving forward with other key points. So the net result is we're $1.1 million favorable to the budgeted negative of 1.1. Gets a little complicated, but we are ahead of budget, factoring in revenues and expenses. So that's obviously a great trend moving forward.
We're ahead 1.1 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so this is really the first year that I am aware of that the city is budgeting on a month-to-month basis so that we have some mechanism to track that isn't a thumb in the wind or quarterly or semi-annual. We really have it as a starting point down to monthly expectations on both revenues and expenses. Compensation savings are starting to accumulate from the vacancies. Last time I did a calculation, it was roughly $78,000 plus or minus that those 6 vacancies have accumulated. One of those filled. And so that will stop that piece of it, but the other 5 are going to continue accruing positive variances until we hire those positions. It's not that I want them to stay vacant, because we had an intent as a city that we needed that resource and needed that person, that body to do that work. But I'm giving you the impact of not having it on the financial side. Again, I'm not saying we want that to stay vacant. I'm just giving you the calculus. So we're expecting the favorable is also caused by the timing of legal bills. Right now, we're paying traditional types of legal bills and paying the retirement committee bills, but the big lawsuits haven't hit yet. And we're anticipating 2 of them later in this year. So that's going to be a timing issue.
I was going to ask you, what's an illegal bill?
Yeah, I wanted to.
But I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
These are bills that we're paying lawyers.
Yes, yes. So it could be capital L legal bills, as in, yes, there are no illegal bills. We do everything by the book, but these are for solicitor, for legal, for law firms. So,
So those are the legal bills that we pay regardless of any special courts or anything that might be happening within the city.
yeah, those are our responsibility bills.
They're on retainer? Or is this?
One of the firms, off the top of my head, one of the firms is on retainer, and that's for our assistant solicitor.
Oh,
and-
Sean Kilkenny, correct.
And the other ones are time usage.
Okay.
And so what's happening is, and I'll introduce the concept right now, is starting from March, we're starting to do more, a deeper dive into all of our revenues and expenses. And one of the things we're doing in this case is for the legal bills is we're scheduling out all the law firms and working with the receivers to better understand what is the Commonwealth's responsibility and what is the city's responsibility. So we're diving deeper into the numbers so we have a better understanding of role definition and trying to project out and give targets so we can have a better handle on the budget. The legal line in our budget is 3.9 million, which is roughly 7% of the total. It is a big number. And therefore, we want to get a better handle on it. We can't control some of it directly, but we have at least a better handle on how it's, what it's causing it and how our responsibilities. Councilman Green?
Yeah, so let me ask you, so every time the receiver files a motion in court and has to go to court with lawyers, is the city paying that bill?
It depends on which case. And I'm trying to get a better handle on that so I can answer your question directly so that you can actually see the schedule. But I can pull up the preliminary schedule we've scheduled out, and we're trying to understand that better.
It would seem as though since he is the receiver from the Commonwealth, that the Commonwealth would pick up a lot of the legal bills versus the city picking up, I guess for certain cases. But like you said, I guess you have to dive deeper into it and see which ones we're responsible for and which ones the state are responsible for. You also mentioned that we have 2 big cases coming up that will accumulate a lot of legal fees. What are those cases?
The one case is the stormwater, and the other one is the bankruptcy. And actually, there's a third, which is the debt. That's the Paxton Hollow debt. So there's really 3 big cases, and
Is it the stormwater or the water authority?
the Water Authority.
Okay.
Yeah, I misspoke, but the Water Authority.
The one for May 14th.
Yes, yes. And so that'll be, again, frankly, with everything that's been going on in the finance world, we have gone with how it's been done, but we're just consistent with everything else. We're just peeling back a layer of the onion on all the different costs and all the different revenues to get better answers, better information that people can make decisions off of.
Let me ask you, is the legal budget is about almost $4 million a year. Is that normal for a city of this size, or?
No. No, I don't have to hesitate at all. We're talking about, it was $4.2 million last year as a budgeted line item, and we didn't have any major cases, and it was still $2 million of spend. But we're talking about conceptually $4 million on a $60 million. That's basically 8%.
Yeah,
That's high.
Yeah, generally, I think it fell around $600,000, somewhere around that.
Is this before we was before we was in receivership? It was about $600,000 a year. Wow.
Well, thank you for the historical
Yeah,
context.
much of that went to outside counsel, and then you add
Yeah.
on.
That's not including our solicitor.
Right.
That's just the outside counsel. Wow.
So you can just say under $1 million.
Under $1 million. And now we're at $4 million. Receivership costs money.
Yeah, yes. And so that's part of, as it quote unquote phases out, there's an expectation of that's going to be money that can be repurposed.
Ain't no telling when it's going to phase out.
Yeah, I
Leadership
can't,
will
I
be here
can't,
for 10 years.
right, I can't speak to timing, I can speak to the concept.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point in time, we're projecting the revenues and expenses to be at budget. It's still early in the year. And what we're tracking. We know that there's some clear positives, and we know that there's a couple of gotchas, but on balance, we're still expecting to be at a good state at year end based on where we're at right now. And as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, the cash is increased by $3 million, largely due to the collections on the revenue side. When we get into the details, I highlighted in blue where the extra monies are starting to reflect and show. The general fund we just talked about, the special revenue, we've collected some significant grant funds. Anticipated, expected, but nevertheless, they came in. So that's the $1,442,000. On the financials, pointing out the positive variance of $244,000 on the year-to-date collections in the real estate area. And
Hold on, Mrs. Trauma, can you go back for a second?
sure,
So in regards to that $244,000, are you saying that the city collected that money from our
So-
residents in
Yeah.
regards to their taxes?
That is correct. The digging into details to specifically answer your question, the first row shows $673,000 of current collections. We targeted $500,000. February is the first month of collections. It's the first time we budgeted by month. So we're trying to pick numbers and amounts that are fairly accurate, albeit no real, we have history of actuals, but for 2025, we're using $500,000 as our starting point for February in the first month. Understanding the bills were mailed the first week of February, and so people started paying the second to the third week of February. So the city downstairs, the window collected $673,000. We also collected prior year or prior years $306,000 versus a target of $240,000. So the combination of those two favorables end up with the $244,000.
Gotcha.
So people are paying ahead of time on our projections. And they continue to pay. And then the other side of that is the employees who are posting are current with their application and their postings. So that's the other positive that's happening, is they're staying and keeping up on it. Okay.
Thank you.
Going to the second slide in the details. I'm pointing out the blue cell about halfway down is earned income tax. I referenced that earlier. The collections are at 3.174 million. We targeted 2.9 million. And same thing happened with the distressed pension earned income. It's $70,000 ahead of budget. So those are the two stars, if you will, in the detail other than the real estate. And then you can also see as you go down further, there's a couple of reds because the department revenues aren't tracking the way they were expected. This one, we have a little caution on how to interpret it because we want the departments to be, quote unquote, producing what is targeted, but we're also making sure that there's a clear message that they're not in the business of going out and being tax collectors or being an intent of producing revenue. The revenue is supposed to flow as they do their responsibilities, but that it's not an intentional go out and target ticketing.
Which department are we referring to?
All
of
the
them
above.
Combined.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a fair statement that I'm looking at the chief of staff, that we've intentionally had this conversation with the department heads several times. We have budgets, we have process, but your job is not to produce, your job is to serve as needed, and the revenues would flow. Fair?
Very fair.
Okay, so we've tried to send that message,
Sounds good.
okay? And so I moved to, that's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we are favorable across the board on compensation, on benefits, and all other types of expenditures. So we have a healthy, favorable of $1,182,000 across the board on expenditures. And we're looking into that as part of our March first quarter deeper dive to validate those numbers, to make sure that they're either, that there aren't lagging expenses, or there aren't gotchas that are waiting in the wings. So that would be the downside that we would be looking to investigate. So those are the things we're working through as, and that's the crux of the February financials. Recap, we're in a good place. We're doing more research to validate and investigate.
How do you investigate? I mean, it's only when bills come in that you didn't expect that you would realize you're off budget, maybe?
That's one way. That's always the gotcha that's out there. But first and foremost, we investigate based off of what we professionally think should be happening, what we budgeted so that we can validate it against budget. I know for a fact that there is one expense line that only has 2 months' worth of expense in it, and so where's the third? Investigating it, we find they bill on the first week of the following month. So we now know how that pattern has evolved. We also know of places where we processed 4 monthly bills in the first 3 months, so we've unfairly charged to the first quarter more than what we have wanted. There's plus minuses that happen. What we're really looking for, to your point, Mayor, is, wow, that expense wasn't budgeted. Now we have to figure out how to cover it off. And then we implement strategies that we try to mitigate those. We try to mitigate all expenses, but we try to mitigate those. We try to work through it as to alternatives. But it's investigating to see, and it could, there's places where we overthought it last year and said we need X, and we find out that we don't need X. More information has come in that tells us either way. We now can refine it based on information that came in that's either going to be favorable or unfavorable. But it's about getting information so that as we move forward through the year, we get a good handle on what the year is going to end up with. And that takes a fair amount of time and effort and digging. And then the other side is it helps us prepare for the budget cycle earlier and in more detail for next year.
All right, so let me tell you what my real point is.
Yeah.
In less words
Yes,
than you
okay.
just shared. This has been your first lap around the track. And if I were to be really tough and hard on you, I would have said all this should have been figured out when you put the budget together. But we know, and if we don't know, we should appreciate the fact that you're working at a great deficit right here, not having that history behind you. So it's going to take this year to identify all these things that you're investigating, learning through, this year's process. So to your last point, when you get to budget cycle this year, it will be a lot cleaner, a lot less gotchas, a lot more information at hand to do less investigations next year.
Yeah.
So
And
thank you for your professionalism in this, because I know it's frustrating for you to come in with a wheelbarrow that's just full of parts and not where they should be. And you're doing the work right now to sort everything out so that when next year comes around, or later this year, you'll have a much better sense of what you're working with, and can get us a budget that's going to be a lot closer so that these variance columns will be a lot tighter. So give yourself a little credit here. And, it's not all scientific. It's not all math and accounting. It's part math, it's part science, it's part history and
part art. So
what?
art.
Art, yeah, that was the other word I was supposed to throw in.
So we're fond of using a similar analogy. Anybody who has teenage children has realized that they have bins of Legos and they're all messed up.
Talking your language.
And all these Legos are in the bin under the bed, and we're putting the parts together. And we've had this comment, and we've had this conversation that we have to go through this whole cycle at least 1 year to get a real sense of things. And you said it well. But we did a pretty good job of getting most of the major stuff right. And so far, it's just a matter of how can we refine it. And that's the process we're going through.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the experience you've had in working in similar situations.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
for that.
So, yeah, it's my pleasure.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No,
I have a question in regards to a comment you made earlier with some hiccups that might occur that, you know, we might not foresee as a city. Obviously, receivership and bankruptcy was one of those hiccups we've experienced over the year. Another hiccup we're experiencing here in Chester is the potential, the possibility, or, you know, the conversation of, you know, us possibly losing a hospital, which is Croger Hospital. Could you speak to how that might affect some of these numbers here for us as a city of Chester? Because I know that's news that's coming out every day, and that's conversation that's changing. And if that's going to be another hiccup that, you know, the city might be responsible for, that's something that we might need to prepare for ahead of time.
yeah, not to scare people, but it's not a hiccup. That would be an alien birth. I watched the Alien movie over the weekend, and I'm just thinking of that's significant.
Well, hold on, to the councilman's point, and maybe we need to address this first. He says that might be something we need to prepare for now. I mean, is there any preparing for an alien birth?
Yes. And I shouldn't be flippant about it at all. It's serious. There's work being done behind the scenes to figure out. Part of the reason that we're doing the March deep dive is to see where we're at financially, so that as decisions are thought about, we would be able to understand the impact that any kind of decision may or may not have. So there is work being done behind the scenes, working through plans, and that's part of my role in it, is to identify what the impact or what might be available.
That's a good answer.
And we're working on it with all due haste. Literally, Wednesday I start at 9 o'clock and I end at 6 o'clock with our meetings with each department to go through each line item to validate, verify, identify, whatever adverb or verb should be used to,
So when it comes to hospital, I think it's important to know what we potentially would have to provide funds for. We're not buying Band-Aids or X-ray machines or stuff like that. I think specifically we're talking about ambulance service. Is there anything else that,
let's
in absence of
let's
a
say
hospital would-
it's fair to say that it's millions of dollars that's being worked on. Is that fair? For the quote-unquote ambulance potential.
It would not be an insignificant cost.
Yeah, we're talking about 7 digits, and it's a matter of,
I want everybody to be clear up here, that's the money, that's what the money would be applied to with the loss of a hospital. The only thing we have control over is potentially obtaining ambulance service. That's it. That's what's going to be lost if the hospital goes down, that we can impact.
Right.
We're not hiring doctors, we're not building a hospital, but the city does not own its own ambulances. But even in the event that the hospital does go down, or it stays in some form, most likely without ambulance service, even if we found the money right now to get ambulances, they're not ours exclusively. They're part of the 911 system, and if there's a call for an ambulance, they'll look countywide and see what ambulance is available. So it's a really tricky proposition. We're probably the least likely or the least prepared municipality financially to even invest that type of money compared to the other surrounding communities. But the solution should be from a sort of a county perspective as opposed to individual. So, you know, we can get 2 ambulances tomorrow. A guy could be in distress right outside our front door, but both ambulances are serving somewhere else because they're part of the 911 system. So it's a discussion about money. It's a discussion about mutual aid amongst communities. It's a discussion about who else is gonna get ambulances. Crozier covered a lot of our municipalities who didn't have ambulances just because you don't make any money on ambulances, first of all. It's a loss. You know, you lose money on ambulance service. But Crozier would provide it virtually for free because they knew more times than not who they're bringing in is going to end up being a patient. So they're going to, you know, recover on that end. But to get an ambulance or 2, and then to staff it, and then to supply it is, how did you put it? How much, a significant amount of money, or?
Not insignificant,
Yeah.
which is, we're talking about millions of dollars
Right. I understand. And not to
as
prolong-
a potential, and we're not experts in that kind of delivery. We are trying to support the decisions and the information to serve the residents, but it's a complex issue that is not insignificant.
Right. No, I definitely understand, and I appreciate that response, Mr. Troutman, genuinely, and the work that you do with the finances to make sure everything is in order. Like I said, just listening to the overall picture and what we're discussing, if we're talking about millions of dollars extra in legal fees that we're spending because of major news, which is receivership and bankruptcy, that's major news. Major news is also the health and safety of our constituents, and Crozier Hospital, you know, scaring people may not be closing, and, you know, that news is in the wind. But as a city, we need to be, you know, in the know on these conversations because it's going to affect us, same way our legal bills are affecting us. The hospital closing, God forbid, would affect us in some shape, form, or fashion. So I was just opening the door for the conversation, and I appreciate the response. You know, as you said, it's not to scare any of our residents, but just to, you know, have the conversation there, the communication, the transparency that, you know, we're looking for as a community, so that we're all on the same page. You know, because it's a scary situation for all of us, but if we're prepared and we're in the conversation and in the know, you know, I feel as though the transition can be very smooth and very beneficial to us all. So that's the reason I asked the question.
Yes, and I appreciate the question, and the response very simply is, we're here to provide information so that decision makers feel like they can make the best informed decisions.
But if we're being fully transparent, which is our intent in the first place, if we're going to find $2 million out of this, that means something is going to suffer because there's no new money coming in. So as we shuffle the money around, as much as we could say, we're making it possible for us to possibly buy ambulances. Here's the things we're going to have to get rid of, or things we have to cut, or things that,
And that is part of the information,
Yeah.
that here's what kinds of things can reasonably be addressed, and which ones start cutting into services or changes. It's not my responsibility to make those changes. I clearly understand it. It's my responsibility to tell decision makers what it looks like so that they can be informed about the changes that may be required and the cost benefits. So that's what this process is about.
Sounds good. Any questions, comments, or concerns from any other members of the committee? And we have no members of the public here, but I will make it official. Any public comment? Any members from Chief? Have any comment? Okay. All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion to adjourn
So move.
Second.
has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting.
Sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Troutman.